Now I'd like to turn to Dave Silvernail for his scenery segment on rocks and weathering. Dave?
All right. See how I can get this thing started. There we go. See how I get this thing expanded full screen. There we go.
It's full for me.
Okay, this is going to be a segment on the Bragdon geodesic foam scenery, which I use on my modules. It's scenery that uses a casting resin and expanding foam in the rock molds. What you're watching right now is me painting with white lacquer paint the mold. The white lacquer is used as a mold release. Got to get every bit of it covered. Got to hit it from all angles. Lacquer dries real quick. So now I'll start mixing the casting resin. Dump equal parts of the A and the B resin into a cup. I got about 20 seconds to mix this up before it really starts setting. So now I just pour real quickly. Try to catch all the high spot or all the low spots. Try not to get too close to the edge. Now I just take a cheap brush and just start painting the surfaces with the casting resin. Have to move quickly because the stuff's setting up already. Just need to get the high spots painted. That was about 6 ounces worth of the casting resin. Or I make 4 ounces. They're 2-ounce cups. 2 ounces of the part A and 2 ounces of part B. Now in the same cup, pour the 2 parts of the expanding foam. Now with the expanding foam, as I mix it up, it starts as an amber color and turns into a kind of a creamy off-white. You have to mix it thoroughly. Make sure you don't have any streaks of color in it. Just have to scrape the sides and scrape the bottom and get it mixed. So now I just dribble it out across everything, moving quickly. Not try to put too much in any one spot. The foam increases to 43 times its volume. So, once that's done, take the plastic and I fold it right up on top. And then I just start moving it around so it all comes in together. Since the foam's a chemical reaction, you can feel the heat coming off of it. So now it's a waiting game. It's going to be about 20 minutes and this thing will be ready. When it's ready, that plastic will peel right off of the back of the expanding foam. Okay, now that it's been about 20 minutes, see how easily the plastic comes off of the foam. Now when this happens, it's time to take it out of the mold. So we start working our way around. Pull up all the edges first. And there we go. A little thin. Could use a little more foam on the back, or a little more casting resin as well. But that's okay, we can fix that. So there it is. Here's how the mold came out. With little bits we can pull out afterwards. Clean this off and be ready to pour again. Okay, now all I gotta do is find out how to stop sharing.
There should be a little red button to do that.
I gotta get onto the, there we go. All right, I got a few more things to show, so let me first of all get rid of the, oh, is it virtual background.
Is there a particular brand of paint you use?
Cheapest lacquer you can find.
It's really important that you cover everything, isn't it? I had no idea you had to use that much.
Yeah, it is. Here is that mold. And it is a bit on the thin side, but that's okay. I can use this as it is, or I can cut it up into pieces if I need to patch in other molds. Here I put a little bit of, oh, is it, this one has a very diluted black paint. Try to bring out some of the texture to it. I've got a couple other molds that I did the day before, smaller casting. And here's where I used some powdered tempera. Really brings out the texture in it. Now, what you might have noticed between the time that I set that mold up to pour and before I took it out, there was another mold sitting there. I poured this thing completely with cast resin without the, was it foam? In that 20 minutes, I was waiting for that mold to be ready to be taken out. Is there any other question? Any questions anybody has?
Yeah, hi, Dave, Greg.
Yeah, Craig.
Could you use the spray lacquer on hydrocal castings as well?
You probably could. All it is it just make sure that whatever you're putting in there doesn't really attack the mold. Now, the hydrocal doesn't attack latex, but what the resins do. So that's the
gotcha.
reason that we use that.
Yeah, I'm looking for something that's a good mold release agent with hydrocal and molds.
Well, what we found with hydrocal or any plaster, as long as the mold is wet, it's not going to bother it.
Yeah, I still had problems with little pinholes, and I'm hoping to get away from that. Yeah,
Well,
Clark, I used wet water and I still got pinholes. Maybe it needs to be wetter.
No, that's the thing. If you lightly spray the mold with water,
Yeah.
it'll help take the hydrocal or the plaster and take it all down into the nooks and crannies of it. And then also tap around it with a hammer. To vibrate it.
Yeah, I think I
Some
need
of
to
the stuff
shake it
come up.
more and vibrate it more. All right, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one. With the expanding foam, can you use the expanding foam in a can, or doesn't work as well?
You can, but that one's harder to control. I find with this, by mixing up the two parts, you got a little more time. As it's coming out of the can, it's expanding immediately. As I mix it up, it takes a good 6 to 10 minutes to really start to expand. So I got time to put it on there and then put the plastic over the top of it and actually try to reduce some of its expansion. If you reduce the expansion, it gets tighter in there and forms a little bit better barrier than if you just take it out of a can.
All right, thank you.
So
I also
the-
tried the expanding foam one time behind some mold I'd set up. Got too much foam in there because it was too big of an area. Came out the next morning, it pushed the mold over on top of the track. So I had to tear it all out and do it again.
So the plastic you put on there, is that like a Visqueen?
Yeah, it's just
Okay,
like a 4 mil plastic. I think that's what carpet runner for was it painting. It's only 3 foot wide.
okay.
Generally, when I set up to do this, I'll try to set up a full 6 foot table and set 3 different molds up. Once I get the first mold, and put the plastic on, I start working the second mold. Sometimes I'll get it all the way to the third mold and then start taking the first mold out, so I don't have any wasted time. One of the reasons I did that little block wall at the same time, between the molding of the first one and taking it out.
Where do you get your molds at?
I buy my molds from Bragdon Enterprises. He's a vendor on the West Coast. Although he also has a website and his molds are very well known across the states. I think I have about 40 of his molds. But being in modular railroading, weight's very important, and his geodesic scenery, the bigger mold I have here weighs about 1.5 ounces. Do that in plaster to weigh about 1.5 pounds. So it's quite a difference. And I find it has better, I have better structure coming with the resin than I do with the hydrocal.
So once you take it out of the mold, it's pretty well set then.
Actually, no. In hydrocal it is. In the resin, I can take a heat gun and get that thing warmed up and make it pliable again. I can even do it a couple of years down the road.
Really?
Yes, this stuff is very forgiving. If you don't like the way it is, you can heat it up, you can move it around. Lots of different things you can do with it since it's a resin. But it is quite a bit more expensive than using hydrocal or plaster.
I noticed you were using a spray bomb. I just wonder if you're doing that outside in well-ventilated area, or just what do you do?
I generally spray the molds outside, but for casting, I can do it inside. There's a little bit of odor to it, but not bad. Tap Plastics has some of the same materials, the cast resins and the expanding foam. They just have, they stink more than the stuff that Bragdon sells. He gets his resin special mix and sells it like that. He's been at it a long time. I've been using his material since 2009. And he was doing it almost 10 years before that.
Does he have a Canadian distributor now?
I don't think he does. I'm not even too sure he has an East Coast distributor. I know there was a fellow who was from the West Coast who went back and hit the big shows on East Coast with his materials. But I don't know if he ever got an East Coast distributor for that. So basically all you can do is go to the Bragdon Enterprises website and find out.
I used to be the Canadian distributor, Roy, for all of Bragdon stuff. The big problem was getting the foams into Canada
Right.
because of
Okay.
the chemical content. I used to go over and bring in I hope no customs guys are listening. I used to bring it over myself uh, through Buffalo, but I didn't do it too much because the risk was just too high and it wasn't worth it. But for my own personal use, I used it. And but I used to have the rust sent in. I sold it to all the hobby shops basically in Canada at one point. And but as Dave said, it's Joel, I think, is primarily the only place you can get it. There was a guy, as Dave said, that was selling. I met him in Train Fest one year, but I haven't seen him since. So it's probably just Joel.
Yeah, I believe it's just Joel. He's got an excellent line of weathering powders. I use that as well. He just is an artist and has found these materials and has been able to mix some of the materials to make it work, and just it's excellent. But the other thing is the tap plastics, or you have, it's not really a hobby shop, but it'd be craft shops that deal with the plastics and the polymers, will have resins and expanding foam that'll work in the Bragdons or any of the latex molds. The one last thing that Joel has is his Magic Bullet latex elixir, which basically helps preserve the latex molds. I only have to spray them about every 4th or 5th time I mold. If I run my hands across the mold and it feels like a thin layer of Vaseline on it, it's good. I just throw the paint in there and go. If it's a little crusty or it's feeling kind of stiff, I use his Magic Bullet on it and it's ready to go. And that's true of almost any latex mold.
So I got to say, I've learned a lot about the mold making today. That was fantastic. I really do appreciate you taking the time to actually show us how you did that, because that was really, really educational. Thank you so much, Dave.
Okay,